Welcome to Terraform Basics. In this video, we'll explore how Terraform works, and you'll see the workflow and learn about the code that defines Terraform resources. You're also going to understand what Terraform can do for you. Now, if you look at my screen here, you'll see that I've got a resource which defines a Google Compute instance. Terraform allows me to define things like virtual machines inside of Google Cloud as code, and then I can use a simple workflow to create them. So here we've got the virtual machine defined, and I'm not going to delve too much into this right now, but let's see how I can create an actual VM from it. If I go over to my terminal and I'm going to run the command Terraform apply. This is the kind of the core of this workflow. Now Terraform is reading my configuration and it's showing me that it's going to create the resources, things like service accounts, the virtual machine, and a few other bits and pieces. Now I answer yes to this, and now Terraform is interacting with Google Cloud and creating those resources. This takes just a little while, as we're also going to be installing software like the NVIDIA drivers, we're going to install Docker, and we're going to set up our own artificial intelligence assistant using the Ollama API. Let's just wait for this to finish. Okay, now it's complete. Let's take a look inside the Google Console. If we go over to the console here and refresh this, what we can see is the virtual machine that I defined with Terraform. And then let's look at the application as well, just to make sure that everything is working as expected. I'm just going to open a new tab in my browser to verify. Yeah, Ollama ULI is launched. And let me just log in using the pre-configured credentials, admin for the username, and the password. I'm going to grab that from Terraform, which was generated by the configuration, paste that in there. And when I log in, you can see that everything's working as expected. So what we've done is to use Terraform to configure a virtual machine inside of GCP, which is being deployed. An application has also been added to this, which is our own personal AI assistant, which might be useful for some of these videos. Okay, so how do I use the Docker provider with Terraform? And let's see what Mistral has got for that. So to use the Docker provider with Terraform, we need to follow these steps. And this is what we're going to look at next. So the example that you've seen right now is a fairly complex one. And there will be a video which digs into this in more depth. But to learn the basics and to learn the workflow, we're going to take a slightly more simple option. Now, before I go any further, the first thing I want to do is to clean up after myself. I'm going to use a command called Terraform destroy. This talks to Google Cloud and basically removes everything that's defined in the configuration. Cleans up after myself. I don't need to worry about anything hanging around or burning any money whilst I'm doing my experimentation. To double check that those resources have actually been deleted, let's back over to our Google Cloud Console and verify the virtual machine isn't there. Brilliant. As you can see, completely gone. So what you've just seen there is a very, very basic example of how Terraform works. Next, what we're going to do is we're going to start digging into this, how you can replicate it for yourself, and that starts with installing Terraform. So the first thing you need to do is you need to install Terraform. Now, the install instructions are available here at developer.hashicorp.com, and we've got the link just there to sort of find that. But there's a number of different ways that you can go about installing things. You can use a package manager like Brew if you're on Mac OS. You can download the binaries for Windows, Mac, Linux, and all of the various different flavors of BSD. Or you can also use package managers for Linux and things like that. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to download the raw Terraform binary and I'm going to install it myself. So I'm running Linux. I am going to grab the AMD 64 version. So I'm just going to copy that link. So what I'm going to do is in my terminal, I'm just going to curl this location. I'm going to output that as terraform.zip. That's going to download. So now I've got that file downloaded. Let me just unzip it. So unzip terraform.zip. That gives me the Terraform binary there, and I need to move that into my path. So I'm going to do that by moving it, move Terraform, and I'm going to put it in user local bin. And user local bin is on my path for my computer here, which means that I'll be able to use that. And that's all we need to do to get that installed. Let me just type my password in and we're all good. So we can now test that out. We're going to do Terraform version. And you can see there that I've installed Terraform 1.9. If you'd like to follow along with this video, you can download the example code from the link on the screen just below here. Inside that repository, you're going to find 4 folders: AWS, Azure, GCP, and Basic. We're not going to delve into the AWS, the Azure, or the GCP folders just for now. We're going to focus on the Basic folder. So inside the Basic folder, there are 2 files, one named main.tf and one named docker.tf. These are really basic Terraform examples that's going to allow us to create Docker containers on our local machine using Terraform. It's an excellent way for learning how to use Terraform without having to worry about making mistakes with cloud infrastructure. In main.tf in the Basics folder, what you'll see is this Terraform block. Now, the Terraform block here defines which provider you're going to use in your configuration, or providers. Now, a provider interfaces between the Terraform code and the cloud provider, or in our example, Docker. So it's that translation between the HCL resources that you can see here and an API call. So if we're looking at docker.tf, you can see those. So we have resource. This is a keyword in Terraform which defines a thing that will be created. In this instance, that thing is a Docker image. So that's the equivalent of us in our CLI running Docker pull. So we define the name of the image that we want to pull, and that's on line 4 there. You can see that we're going to use HashiCorp Vault 1.12.6. Then we can create another resource, and the other resource is going to be a Docker container. So that's the equivalent of running Docker run, specifying the port, the name, and obviously that image that we want to run. Now, what you can see here is we're not actually directly specifying the image. What we're doing is we're using a reference to another resource. By using these references in this way, Terraform understands that it needs to perform the Docker image action before it creates the Docker container. There's no structure in terms of the order of the resources or which file they're placed in. Terraform works all of this out through this integration and linking. So let's see how this works. So what we need to do first is we need to change into that Basics folder, and we need to run a command called Terraform Init. Now, Terraform Init is going to search your configuration in this current folder, and it's going to download the plugins from the Terraform registry that we can then use. So you can see there that is all downloaded. The next step in our workflow is to run Terraform plan. So let's see how that works. So what the Terraform plan command is going to do is it's going to analyze the resources that we've got defined in our configuration. So in our instance, this Docker image and this Docker container, and it's going to have a look at what already exists, and it's going to tell us that difference. So because we don't have anything that's been created, Terraform is going to tell us that it's going to create these 2 new resources. So let's run the command and see that in action. So Terraform plan. You can see that there are 2 resources to add and nothing to change or destroy. Where possible in the output, Terraform is telling us the values of things that are going to be created. So if you look at the Docker image, you can see that the name is going to be set to HashiCorp Vault 1.12. This is the image that we're going to pull. Now, the image ID and the other details we don't know about because Terraform hasn't actually gone and created them yet. So it's telling us that we'll know after apply has been run. You can see there in the Docker container, it's very much the same thing. The properties Terraform already know about, we see in the output. The things that it doesn't, it says known after apply. Now, I didn't run a plan when I showed you a basic demo before. I just ran straight into the Terraform apply. And that was because with Terraform apply, it actually will show you a plan as well. So let's see that in action. Let's run Terraform apply and let's create our resources. So Terraform apply, this is the command which will actually go ahead and create the resources which are defined in our configuration. Now, as a sanity check, it's always going to show you a plan. You can see the changes that you're going to make, and it's important to kind of check those to make sure you haven't made any unintended configuration changes. But there's 2 resources there. I'm happy with that. So I'm going to answer yes. And what's happening? Terraform is now going and creating those resources. So it's running that Docker pull in the background. And then after it's run the Docker pull, what it's going to do is it's going to create the container. Now that's completed. So let's just do a Docker PS. And you can see that we've got that container created 8 seconds ago, and it's exposed the ports as we requested. So let's just check that that's running. I'm going to do a curl localhost 8200, and this is Vault. So we're going to do Vault sys health, and let's just pipe that into JQ, and we can see the output there. So everything is up and running. Everything is perfect. Now the Vault version, you can see 1.12.6. Let's now have a look at how Terraform can automatically update this container when we change the configuration. So what I now want to do is I want to update this Vault image, and I want to update it to the latest version of Vault. So let's pop over to the Docker Hub, and we can see that the latest version of Vault is 1.17. Well, let's run 1.17.1. This was pushed 8 days ago. So I'm going to go back over to my configuration, and I'm going to make a change here. So I'm changing the version from 1.12.6 to 1.17.1. Now, what's going to happen is Terraform understands that the current version of the image is 1.12.6. It understands that the container has been deployed with 1.12.6, and it's going to suggest the changes that need to be made in order to convert what is existing to what is defined inside of the configuration. So to do that, all I have to do is run that Terraform apply again. Terraform apply. So what we can see is that Terraform is telling me it's going to add 2 resources and it's going to destroy 2 resources. The reason for this is that certain resources can't be updated. And the Docker image is one of those types of resource. Now, Terraform is also telling me that by changing the name from Vault 1.12.6 to 1.17.1, it's going to force a replacement. It also understands that the container needs to change. And again, you can see that it's being forced replaced on the container because the image has changed, of which the container is dependent. So we're just going to run Terraform apply. Terraform's going to delete the existing container that I've got running. It's going to pull the new image and it's going to create the container. So that'll just take a couple of seconds. And we're done. So let's just check that that is all running. Docker PS. Okay, we've got our new container, which is up and running. Let's again curl that 8200 v1 sys health, and then we're just going to pipe that into JQ. And again, now what we can see is that we're running version 1.17.1. So Terraform has enabled me to define that configuration, define that container, but also when I update it, it understands how to actually go about doing that. And you can see that we do only have that one container running here. Now, what if I want to clear up after myself? Well, what I can also run is a command called Terraform destroy. So the Terraform destroy command will remove any of the resources that you've created by running apply. So if I run Terraform destroy, you'll be able to see again, I'm getting that plan output. Terraform is telling me what it's going to do, and it's telling me that it's going to destroy 2 resources. So that's our image and our container. So I'm going to answer yes to that. In the same way as Terraform with the apply uses that provider to interface to Docker and create my resources, destroy does the reverse. So if I do Docker PS, you can see that the container is gone. So that workflow is as such. We define our configuration. So we've created the resources that we want to create. We've registered our plugin and we've chosen the specific version of that plugin that we want to use. Then what we did was we ran initialize. We did a plan to check what will be created and that a configuration is correct. And finally, we've applied it, which created those resources. To clean up after ourselves, you can see that now we can run that destroy step. The beauty of defining this with Terraform is that now this has been created, every time I run apply, the result is going to be pretty much the same. So I can run apply and destroy. It gives me a really nice kind of feed and workflow to be able to create those resources. Now you understand the core workflow for Terraform. Let's take a look at the concept around state. So the first thing I want to do is I'm just going to rerun my Terraform apply. So Terraform apply, and I'm going to add an additional flag here, and I'm going to run auto approve. And auto approve is going to answer yes automatically for me. It's just a convenience method. I wouldn't want to do this in production, but it's just a quick way that I can kind of do a one-stop apply. So we're just creating those resources there, and that's done. Now, let's have a look at this. If we look inside of the folder, what we have are some files, Docker main TF, Terraform State, and Terraform State backup. Now, we've already looked at the docker.tf, and we've already looked at the main.tf, but what is this state file? Well, the state file is where Terraform stores the details of what it's actually created. And it uses this state file in order to be able to determine the changes that are going to be made between your configuration and the resources which are defined in the state. So looking at this example here, you can see the Docker container. You can see all of the various different properties that were created. If I changed any of these details inside of here, so for example, say I changed the name to Terraform Vaults, what Terraform is going to do is going to look at the configuration and it's going to compare the value inside of the state. So for example, here we've got the name and the state of Terraform Basics Vault. In the configuration, it's Terraform Basics Vaults. So if I run Terraform plan, it's going to tell me that there's one change to be made there because it's doing that comparison and it's checking the state. So state is a really, really important concept inside of Terraform. So we've just looked at the state file itself. Now the state file was stored on my disk here because I'm using local state. There's a number of different ways you can store state. You can store it locally, as we see here. You can store it remotely inside of Terraform Cloud and many different places. We will look at those later on as a more advanced topic, but for now, let's move on to see how we can actually use some of the Terraform CLI commands to interact with state. We can actually inspect the state using the Terraform CLI. The most basic command is if I do Terraform show. And Terraform show is going to show me exactly what's going on inside of the state. Now, I only have 2 resources in this configuration, but on a more complex configuration, there could be hundreds, if not more. So using Terraform show and just having that big output dumped there is not necessarily going to be so useful. But there are other commands that we can use. We can use the Terraform State command. Now, Terraform State has a bunch of subcommands. It allows me to list the resources, move items, and to deal with things like remote state. Now, at the moment, we're only going to concern ourselves with list and show. So let's have a look at this. Terraform State List. So we can see that we have these 2 items, the Docker container and the Docker image. Let's inspect the container's state. So again, I can do Terraform State Show, and then the name of the resource. And then this way I can see only that one resource. I can be very specific on what I want to look at. This is also going to be especially useful when you start getting to more advanced concepts with Terraform and you start using things like Terraform Enterprise, because the state file isn't always going to be local. It can be stored in a S3 bucket or in a cloud storage or inside of Terraform Enterprise. And in fact, when you're dealing with production configurations, that's the way that we recommend that you do it. But for now, we don't need to worry about those things. So this has just been a very basic introduction to what Terraform is and the basic workflow. You've learned about providers and how they interact with the API. It's that interface between your Terraform configuration and things like Docker, which we've seen in this example. You've learned about the configuration and how writing configuration enables you to create instances such as Docker images, Docker containers, and in fact, depending on the provider you use, all kinds of cloud resources, like the example you saw at the very beginning of this video. You've seen how Terraform detects changes. By changing the configuration, Terraform can understand whether it can update a resource or whether it needs to replace it. And you've seen how the destroy command can actually clean up after ourselves. The next step is to start looking at the example and demo that I showed you at the very beginning of the video. That is, how do we create a virtual machine within a cloud? And in one of the follow-up videos, you can learn just how to do that. We're going to walk through step by step how you can create that example of running Ollama in either GCP, Azure, or AWS. But for now, thank you very much. I hope you've enjoyed this video, and we'll see you soon.